Getting ready to listen. 1. The story and you. In this story, King Midas is granted a wish. Everything he touches will turn to gold. Suppose that you could be granted one wish. What would that wish be? You may wish for only one thing. Explain why you chose your wish in the comment below this video. 2. Learning about literature. The Golden Touch by Nathaniel Hawthorne is based on a myth. A myth is a very old tale that is usually about gods and goddesses and important or famous people. In Hawthorne's story, a stranger gives Midas the golden touch. In other tales about Midas, the king receives the golden touch from Bacchus, the Greek god of wine. Midas gets the golden touch in return for a favor he did for Bacchus. The word myth comes from the Greek word mythos, which means story. The title of the story, The Golden Touch, is it possible to have too much of a good thing? You may find the answer in this famous myth. The ancient Greeks told the story of Midas. He was a rich and powerful king who loved gold more than anything else in the world. However, if there was one thing he adored just as much, it was Marigold, his daughter. She is worth her weight in gold, the king often remarked. At one time, the king enjoyed looking at flowers. He had planted a garden that contained the largest and most beautiful roses that any mortal ever saw. But now, if he glanced at the flowers at all, it was only to estimate how much they would be worth if they were made out of gold. Midas spent part of every day in an enormous room in his palace. That huge chamber, which was filled with gold, was his treasure room. There the king counted his many bags of gold and let the pieces of gold slip through his fingers. He often whispered to himself, "Oh, Midas, rich King Midas, what a happy man you are." Then he always added softly, "But how much happier you would be if you had more gold." One day, Midas was in his treasure room counting his fortune. Suddenly, a long shadow fell upon the heaps of gold. Midas looked up and saw a young man who stood there, smiling at him. Midas was certain he had locked the door, and there was no other entrance to the room. Therefore, the king concluded that his visitor must have very great powers. The stranger looked around the room, then smiled again. "You are a wealthy man, friend Midas," he said. "I doubt whether any other 4 walls on earth contain as much gold as you have managed to pile up in this room." "I have done fairly well," admitted King Midas, "but it has taken me my whole life to obtain this much, and there is so much more gold I would love to possess." "What?" exclaimed the stranger. "Then you are not satisfied?" "I am not," said King Midas, shaking his head. "What would satisfy you?" asked the young man. "I am curious to know." Midas paused and thought for some time. Finally, a really bright idea came to the king. It seemed as bright as the glistening gold he loved so much. "It is only this," the king replied. "It takes so much time, trouble, and effort to collect my treasures. One wish, ... I wish that everything I touch would turn to gold." The stranger's smile lit up the room, and everything shone brilliantly. "The golden touch," he said. "The golden touch. That is an excellent wish indeed. But are you sure that wish would satisfy you? Are you sure that your wish would make you happy? How could it fail?" Said Midas, "And you would never regret that you asked for it?" "That wish is all I ask," King Midas said. "It would bring me perfect happiness." "Then you shall have the wish that you desire," the stranger said. "Tomorrow, when the sun comes up, everything that you touch will turn to gold." "Goodbye for now," the young man said, and he disappeared as suddenly as he had come. Midas did not sleep at all that night, but tossed and turned and waited eagerly for morning to arrive. Before the sun was up, Midas Teres, he touched the table by his bed and stretched his arm to place his hand on a chair that stood nearby. But the bed and the chair remained just as they had been before. Neither one turned to gold. Had it all been a dream, or had the stranger played a trick on him? The disappointed king walked slowly to the window. The Sorby's door sunlight reached the palace room. Midas hastened to the bed and touched it with his hand. The bed turned to gold. The king rushed frantically about the room. He picked up a book, which turned instantly to gold. He brushed against a mirror, which turned to gold. He put on his clothes, which also turned at once to gold. His new fine gold suit looked magnificent indeed. It was a bit heavy, but still it was gold. King Midas pushed open the door, which turned to gold. He then went down the stairs and smiled as he observed that each stair turned to gold as he descended step by step. Into the garden Midas went. He moved from bush to bush and put his hand on each and every rose, which at his touch changed at once to gold. Then, satisfied with his good work, he returned to the palace. It had been an active morning for King Midas, and he was very, very hungry. The king ordered his servants to bring him breakfast, and he told them to summon Marigold, his daughter. Usually, little Marigold was the happiest of children. Midas really loved his daughter, and he was eager to inform her about his amazing good fortune. Before long, he heard her voice, but the child was crying bitterly. This amazed King Midas, for she almost never shed a tear. Marigold opened the door. She held a handkerchief to her red eyes, and she cried as though her poor heart was breaking. "Why, dear child, what is wrong?" asked the king. "Why are you crying on this very fine morning?" Marigold did not answer, but she held out a bright yellow rose that she had picked in the garden. "It is a beautiful rose," exclaimed her father. "It is a rose made of gold. It is not beautiful," responded the girl. "It is ugly. All the roses in the garden have changed like this one, and are no longer soft and fragrant. A rose should be soft, and a rose should smell sweet." She looked sadly at the rose in her hand, and then she tossed it away. "Do not cry, my dear girl," said the king. "You can get hundreds of roses for one made of gold. Now let us have breakfast." Approximately. The servants had placed plates of food on the table, and Midas picked up a roll. The astonished king stared at the roll it had turned to gold. He picked up roll after roll, but each one turned to gold. The king reached for an egg, but it instantly changed to gold in his hand. There was water in a glass, but when the king touched the glass turned to gold, and the water in the glass became gold when it touched the king's lips. Midas sat silently at the table, bewildered and stunned. "Ah, dear child," he finally said to his daughter, "I do not know what will become of your father." "What is the matter?" she asked, alarmed. Then she jumped out of her chair and hurried to comfort the king. When she reached his side, Midas threw his arms around the girl and bent down to kiss the child's head, but Marigold did not move. She did not speak. She had turned to gold. "What have I done?" King Midas cried out. "What have I done? Oh, my precious Marigold!" While Midas, filled with despair, stared at the ground, he suddenly became aware of the young man standing near the door. "Well, friend Midas," said the stranger, "I granted you the golden touch. Are you happy now?" Are you satisfied now?" Midas shook his head. "I am very miserable," he said. "There are more important things in life than gold. I hate the golden touch. It has cost me my child." "You are wiser than you were, King Midas," said the stranger. "Tell me, do you sincerely wish to rid yourself of the golden touch?" "With all my heart," King Midas said. "It is hateful to me." "Then hurry to the river that runs past your garden. Throw yourself into the water, and it will wash away your wish. Bring back a pitcher of water from the river. Sprinkle the water over your daughter, and you will have her back again." It goes without saying that King Midas lost no time in doing exactly what he was told. He hurried to the river and plunged into the water. When he emerged, a cold, hard, and heavy weight seemed to be lifted from his heart. Midas filled a pitcher with water and rushed back to the palace. He sprinkled the water on his daughter, and all at once she came back to life. She was not aware, and did not even know or remember, that she had been changed to a little golden statue. Then Midas went into the garden and sprinkled some water onto every rose bush there. The roses turned red, and each one smelled sweet. The following day Midas returned to the river. He saw that the sand of the river sparkled like gold. And to this day, if you look at the sand near a river, you will see that it always glistens like gold. Meet the author Nathaniel Hawthorne, 1804 to 1864, was born in Salem, Massachusetts. After he graduated from college, Hawthorne shut himself up in an old house in Salem. For more than 10 years he seldom left his room. He spent almost all of his time writing. Hawthorne started out by writing short stories, and then began to write books. The Scarlet Letter, his best-known novel, made Hawthorne famous around the world. He is one of America's greatest writers,